Authorities in France say they fear 11 people are dead after a fire broke out in a holiday home for people with disabilities in eastern France.
5 officers from France's elite tactical police unit have been arrested in connection with the death of a 27-year-old man during July's riots in Marseille.
At least 41 people have died, including 3 children, after a migrant ship capsized while trying to reach the Italian island of Lampedusa. The European Union pledges short and long-term financial support for Slovenia to cope with the aftermath of disastrous flooding and landslides.
Nagasaki marks the 78th anniversary of the atomic bombing of the Japanese city that left between 60 and 80,000 people dead.
French authorities have confirmed the deaths of all 11 adults reported missing after a fire broke out on Wednesday in a holiday home for people with disabilities in eastern France. Officials said 17 people were also evacuated from the building in the small town of Winsenheim in northeastern France, close to the border with Germany. The blaze started early this morning and soon prompted France's Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin to tweet that despite the rapid and courageous intervention of the fire department, several casualties were reported. Local authorities said they deployed 76 firefighters and 4 fire engines, along with 4 ambulances, to contain the blaze and treat the victims. 40 police officers were also mobilised.
5 officers from France's elite tactical police unit RAID were taken into custody on Tuesday in connection with the death of a 27-year-old man. Mohamed Bendris, who worked for a delivery service, died in hospital in early July at the time of violent riots in the southern city of Marseille. He'd reportedly felt unwell while riding his scooter, but an autopsy showed traces of an impact on his chest. It's believed this could have been caused by a rubber bullet, possibly fired by the police as they struggled to control violent riots in the city. The protests were sparked by the death of a teenage boy who was shot dead by a policeman during a traffic check outside Paris in late June. The 5 officers were detained for questioning in the probe over Bendris' death, and 2 of them were later released.
At least 41 people, including 3 children, have died in a shipwreck off the island of Lampedusa in southern Italy. 4 survivors were rescued by a Maltese merchant ship and transferred to the Italian Coast Guard. On their arrival at Lampedusa, they told authorities that their boat left from Tunisia and was capsized by a larger wave. 34 people were reported drowned last week in 2 other shipwrecks off the Mediterranean island. Some 92,000 irregular migrants have arrived in Italy this year, more than double the number compared to the same period in 2022. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was welcomed by Slovenian Prime Minister Robert Golob in Brdo pri Kranju on Wednesday, where she witnessed Slovenia's devastating summer floods firsthand. Floods and landslides have submerged large parts of central and northern Slovenia over the last week. The European Union is now pledging short and long-term financial support to cope with the aftermath.
We were with you in the first days, immediately with the material that was needed. It is the mobile bridges, the excavators, the helicopters and the technical team and the crews. And of course we will stay as long as it is necessary.
The extreme weather has led to the deaths of 6 people. Slovenia's National Weather Service says a month's worth of rain fell in just 24 hours. The government estimates that the damage could exceed €500 million.
In the Odemira region of Portugal's southwest, close to 1,000 firefighters are battling a wildfire, local authorities say. At least 9 have been injured so far tackling the flames. About 7,000 hectares have burned. As a precautionary measure, more than 1,400 people had to be evacuated from villages and a campsite on Monday. The fire broke out on Saturday as the country was hit by soaring temperatures and high winds. In Santarém, about 80 kilometers northeast of Lisbon, the mercury reached a record 46.4 degrees Celsius on Monday. Neighbouring Spain is experiencing its 3rd heat wave this summer and is also battling a number of wildfires. One of the regions currently affected is Extremadura. In Valencia de Alcántara, a fire has burnt around 300 hectares.
Y aquí estamos, hemos alojado a los clientes en un hotel de Valencia de Alcántara y aquí estamos preocupados y con la angustia porque tenemos una masa forestal enorme, unos alcornoques centenarios y nos da mucha pena.
Por los animales, tenemos vacas y pues eso, preocupa por ello. Estamos intentándolo reunirlas en sitios donde no arde, para eso, para estar más tranquilos del incendio.
Spain's AMET weather agency said temperatures will continue to rise until at least Friday.
At least 31 people have been injured in an explosion north of Moscow at a warehouse containing pyrotechnics, the regional governor Andrei Vorobyov said Wednesday. According to the governor, 19 people were taken to hospital and 3 moved to intensive care. Russian social media channels shared footage showing huge plumes of smoke billowing into the air. Glass windows were blown out in nearby residential flats and the surrounding area evacuated. The warehouse is privately rented from a factory that makes medical equipment and optical equipment for Russia's security forces.
A Russian official claims former Austrian Foreign Minister Karin Kneissl has rented a house in the village of Petroshovo, some 300 kilometers east of Moscow. Known for her close ties with Russia, she came in for criticism in 2018 when she curtsied to President Vladimir Putin and danced with him at her wedding. Kneissl was also a member of the board of directors of Russia's oil giant Rosneft, resigning shortly before the start of the Ukraine invasion. She's reportedly learning Russian and writing a book.
Life is returning to normal in Niger's capital Niamey 2 days after the end of an ultimatum from West African regional group ECOWAS to restore the democratically elected government. But politically, things remain uncertain. The coup leaders have named a new prime minister, but the international community isn't ready to move on. On Tuesday, Brussels stressed that it won't work with what it calls the illegitimate authorities in Niger and is still pushing for diplomacy.
One thing is certain, there will be no positive consequences if this military coup is allowed to proceed and be established as a fact on the ground. We still believe that there is a space, there is a room for mediation efforts. ECOWAS is the main actor, the main regional actor in this. Whatever ECOWAS decides will then be implemented.
But leaders of the junta in Niger have refused to receive a negotiating mission from the United Nations, ECOWAS and the African Union, citing security concerns. ECOWAS is due to meet on Thursday to discuss next steps.
The political leaders of 8 Amazon countries are holding a 2-day summit in an effort to reach agreements aimed at helping preserve the South American rainforest. On the agenda at the event in Belém in northern Brazil are issues that include deforestation, illegal gold mining and environmental violations.
Há 14 anos que não nos reuníamos. É a primeira vez que o fazemos aqui no Pará e a primeira vez num contexto de severo agravamento da crise climática. Nunca foi tão urgente retomar e ampliar essa cooperação. Os desafios da nossa era e as oportunidades que surgem demandam ação conjunta.
Outside the venue there was a protest by people indigenous to the Amazon region. Some carried signs protesting against capitalism, greenwashing, the oil industry and gold mining, all issues of importance to the people who call the region home.
For 9 years, he was the leader of Colombia's largest and most brutal narco-trafficking syndicate, the Gulf Clan. Now the notorious drug kingpin Dario Antonio Usuga, known as Otoniel, has been sentenced to 45 years in prison in the United States. Extradited to the US last year, he pleaded guilty to running a criminal enterprise and drug smuggling in January. He was accused of shipping almost 100,000 kilograms of cocaine into the country. During his sentencing on Tuesday, he apologized for his actions. Former US President Donald Trump on the campaign trail in New Hampshire. A week after being indicted on felony charges for his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 elections, he said he would continue to talk about the case even as prosecutors sought a protective order to limit the evidence he and his team could share.
So this is all about election interference, but that isn't quite good enough. Crooked Joe now wants the thug prosecutor, this deranged guy, to file a court order taking away my First Amendment rights so that I can't speak. So listen to this. We don't want you to speak about the case. The case is a ridiculous case.
Federal prosecutors say Trump is seeking to try the case in the media rather in the courtroom. The former president, who's also facing charges in Florida and New York, is gearing up for a possible fourth indictment in Georgia.
People in Nagasaki on Wednesday marked the 78th anniversary of the atomic bombing of the Japanese city on August the 9th, 1945, that killed between 60 and 80,000 people. Speaking at the atomic bomb victims' memorial peace ceremony, Shiro Suzuki, mayor of Nagasaki, said that while Russia is not the only country representing the risk of nuclear deterrence, as long as states are dependent on nuclear deterrence, the world will never be rid of the weapons. There were similar thoughts from the Japanese Prime Minister, who couldn't attend in person.
核軍縮をめぐる国際社会の分断が深まり、ロシアによる核の威嚇が行われる中で、核兵器のない世界の実現に向けた道のりは一層厳しいものになっています。
The Nagasaki bomb came 3 days after the US dropped an atomic device on Hiroshima, killing an even greater number of people. The incidents hastened the end of World War II, but there have been arguments ever since over whether the attacks were justified or necessary.